My dear Mr. Bennet, did not you hear me? Did you know that Netherfield Park is let at last? Do not you want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Well, my dear, you must know. His name is Bingley, and he is single, my dear. Think of that, Mr. Bennet. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 pounds a year. What a fine thing for our girls.
How so?
Well, my dear Mr. Bennet, you must know that I am thinking of his marrying one of them.
Is that his design in settling here?
Design? Nonsense! How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he will fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as you can.
I will send a few lines to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls. Though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie.
I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others. She is not half as handsome as Jane, nor as good-humoured as Lydia.
But in this instance, my poor little Lizzie is the only one who is unprovided for. Lydia and the others belong in a schoolroom, and you tell me that Mr. Collins has already spoken for Jane.
Oh, that odious Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins, odious! You surprise me! I had thought that he had won your full approval.
I suppose it will be a mercy if he does marry Jane. But I do think, Mr. Bennet, it is the hardest thing in the world that we have no son of our own, so that your property has to be entailed away from your own wife and children. So if you should die, we should all be turned out of the house whenever this Mr. Collins pleases. He certainly does seem to have all the luck in the world. Here he has just got this good living from that grand Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Oh, but, my dear, that will soon be your luck as well. You forget that your daughter is to profit by it.
Well, perhaps. I don't know about that. But I do know that it is too monstrous that after you are gone, I shall be forced to make way for that man and live to see him master in this house.
My dear, do not give way to such gloomy thoughts. Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may be the survivor.
Oh, well, I suppose it might be worse.
Decidedly worse. Now with Jane so well settled and a single man like Mr. Bingley in prospect, I should think you should be quite cheerful.
Mr. Bingley? We shall never know Mr. Bingley. Oh, Mr. Bennet, you take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves.
Oh, you mistake, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I have heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least.
Oh, that horrid practice. Jane does so keep me at it. La, I am tired to death.
Mamma, does your head hurt?
Of course my head hurts. Your father is so teasing. I cannot persuade him to call on Mr. Bingley at Netherfield, so I suppose we shall never know him.
But you forget, Mamma, we shall meet him at the assemblies, and Lady Lucas has promised to introduce us.
I do not believe Lady Lucas will do any such thing. She has daughters of her own. She is a selfish, hypocritical woman, and I have no opinion of her. Don't keep coughing, Lydia, for heaven's sake. Have a little compassion on my nerves.
Lydia has no discretion in her coughs. She times them ill.
I do not cough for my own amusement, Papa. Jane, when is your next ball?
Tomorrow fortnight.
Aye, so it is, and Lady Lucas does not come back till the day before. So you see, it will be impossible for her to introduce Mr. Bingley, for she will not know him herself.
Oh, then, my dear, you may have the advantage of your friend, and you can introduce Mr. Bingley to her.
Impossible, Mr. Bennet, when I am not acquainted with her myself. How can you be so teasing? Oh, I am sick of Mr. Bingley.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But why did you not tell me so before? If I had known as much as a week ago, I should certainly not have called upon him.
What? You have really called upon him? Oh, how good in you, my dear Mr. Bennet.
Oh, well, it's very unlucky, but as I have actually paid the visit, and as he will very likely return it at any time and bring his friend Mr. Darcy with him, we cannot now avoid the acquaintance of Mr. Bingley and his party.
Oh, my dear Mr. Bennet. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Well, how pleased I am. And it was such a good joke that you should already have paid Mr. Bingley a visit and never said a word about it.
Yes. Well, I must go to the library. Now, Lydia, you can cough as much as you choose.
What an excellent father you have, girls. At our time of life, it is not so pleasant to be making new acquaintances every day. But for your sakes, we would do anything. Where is Lizzie? Lydia, my love, where is your sister?
Oh, she's out walking with Charlotte Lucas and the dismal Mr. Collins.
Lizzie, out walking with Mr. Collins? Why don't you go, Jane?
I had to practice with Lydia.
Why does Papa have a cousin like that? And what is Mr. Collins doing here?
Oh, he really cannot help it. I hope that all you girls will be very civil to him, Jane especially.
Mamma?
Yes, my love. You see, it's
Oh, very well, Mr. Collins. What is it, Mamma? What is the matter?
nothing. What have you done with Mr. Collins?
Oh, Mr. Collins is safe. He's gone round to the library. But I have brought someone else with me.
Oh, Mr. Wickham.
Mr. Wickham.
How do you do, Mrs. Bennet? This is indeed a pleasure. Miss Bennet, I'm so glad to see you. You were not with our party. And why do you never come to Meryton, Miss Lydia? Mr. Denny is quite downcast.
Oh, la, Mr. Denny.
And many others beside him, Miss Lydia.
Well, 'tis an age since we saw you, Mr. Wickham. What have you been doing?
Colonel Forster keeps me so busy, I have no time for enjoyment.
Yes, Mr. Wickham bears all the marks of a harassed and overworked man.
Thank you, Miss Elizabeth. You see before you, Miss Bennet, a harassed and overworked man. Miss Elizabeth will bear witness I was on my way to a business appointment when I yielded to temptation and went for a walk with her and Miss Lucas and their irreproachable escort.
And Miss Elizabeth will also testify that you yielded with the celerity and ease of long practice.
But in this case, who was the tempter?
Oh, I will admit that Mr. Collins was partially responsible.
Come, Lizzie, you have been talking to Mr. Wickham all the morning. Now let some of the rest of us have a chance. You must stay to dinner, Mr. Wickham.
Oh, truly, I cannot today, Mrs. Bennet. It is too bad, but I am to meet Colonel Forster on important business at the Drake farm.
Well, I am very sorry.
Thank you, but now I really must be gone. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Lucas. You must let me hear about those clever plans of yours. I am vastly interested in them. Good morning, Miss Elizabeth. You must try to temper your justice with mercy the next time I join you in a walk.
Oh, Mr. Wickham.
Really, Mamma, I think you should speak to Lydia. She is too forward.
Nonsense. Well, she is no more forward than any of you. All you gals are crazy about Mr. Wickham, but I can't wonder at it. He certainly is a most engaging young man. Oh, Mr. Collins, there you are. Did you enjoy your walk?
Most assuredly, madam. The beauties of nature, not only in the landscape, but also in the blooming countenances of my fair companions, made our expedition a peculiarly enjoyable one.
Well, I am very glad of it, I'm sure. Gals, we haven't told Lizzie and Charlotte the news.
What news, Mamma?
Oh, nothing of consequence, Lizzie. Only your father has just told us that we may expect a visit at any time from our new neighbor, Mr. Bingley, and that friend of his who is stopping with him.
Mr. Bingley! That will be entertaining. Do you not think so, Mr. Collins?
What? Excuse me, Miss Elizabeth, on what subject did you ask my opinion?
I asked if you didn't think it was a very pleasant thing to meet new neighbours.
Oh, most assuredly, Miss Elizabeth, if those neighbours are possessed of qualifications which redound to their own credit and to the edification of their friends. Otherwise, as a clergyman, I must hesitate in my approval. You realize, I am sure, madam, the caution which should ever be exercised where my amiable young cousins are concerned.
Yes, Mamma, you really should be cautious.
Nonsense. Why, my dear Mr. Collins, we have found out all about them. Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy are connected with some of the most respectable families in England.
Mr. Darcy? Mr. Fitzgerald Darcy? My dear madam, can it be possible that you are to be honoured by a visit from him? Why, he is the nephew of my noble patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It is true that I have never yet had the honour of meeting him, but he frequently visits his aunt, and she has promised to bring him on some occasion to inspect my humble abode. I am surprised, indeed, by the civility on his part. I only fear there may be some mistake, for Mr. Darcy has the reputation of possessing a very natural pride of birth. But if your information is indeed to be relied upon, I think Lady Catherine would consent to my approval of this visit, provided my fair cousins would keep in mind the proper attitude of respectful humility which should be assumed toward a person of his superior station.
We will promise you, Mr. Collins, never for one instant to forget either Mr. Darcy's exalted position or our own insignificance.
With that assurance, Miss Elizabeth, I think even Lady Catherine would be satisfied. So I need no longer withhold my sanction. Miss Jane, there was a volume of Fordyce's sermons that you may remember I was reading to you yesterday. Do you know where it is?
I haven't seen it, Mr. Collins. I will go find it for you.
No. Lydia will find it.
Oh, Mrs. Bennet, I am quite sure that I saw the book in the hall. I will go fetch it.
On no account, Charlotte. Lydia will find the book. Lizzie, go and get the mud off your shoes. Charlotte, if you will come with me, I have a parcel I should like to send to your mother. Lydia will find your book, Mr. Collins.
Oh, on no account, madam.
Miss Bennet, do you realise the honour which is so soon to fall upon our humble home and our gratefully humble selves?
Oh, Lizzie.
Do you really grasp the full significance of the fact that we may soon be honoured by a visit from Mr. Bingley of Netherfield and Mr. Fitzgerald Darcy, nephew of the Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
Oh, Lizzie.
Oh.
Mr. Collins is a little pompous, but he seems a very well-meaning young man. Indeed, sometimes quite agreeable.
Oh, no one can be anything but agreeable in the mind of our dear Jane. But this time, however, I quite agree with you. I am delighted as papa with Mr. Collins. I can see that his mixture of civility and importance promises well.
And I think Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy promise well. If the half of what our neighbours say is true, Mr. Bingley will bring us all sorts of gaieties. Who knows? We may find him as entertaining as Mr. Wickham.
Is Mr. Wickham? Then, dear Jane, we shall be rich indeed. For hospitality, Mr. Bingley. For conversation, Mr. Wickham. For grandeur, Mr. Darcy. And the agreeable Mr. Collins.
Oh, Lizzie, can you not let the poor man alone?
With all my heart, I will gladly let him alone. You shall have him all to yourself.
You are a tease.
The two gentlemen from Netherfield have just brought their horses into the paddock, madam.
Oh, show them in, Harris, and speak to Mrs. Bennet at once.
Oh, come with me, Jane. I must go make myself tidy. Mud and dirty petticoats for Mr. Darcy. Oh, that would never do.
You will announce us to Mr. Bennet and the ladies. Do you know, Darcy? I believe that was George Wickham we saw just now going toward the Drake farm.
I think there is no doubt of it.
What is he doing here?
I don't think we need mind Wickham.
But I do mind. To think that I should bring you into the neighborhood of that rascal.
He must live somewhere, I suppose.
Yes, unfortunately. But Darcy, you are a puzzle to me. You are indeed. How can you speak with any charity of a man who for years abused the generous kindness of your father, and who so lately has attempted against your family the most dastardly action that—
I've already said too much of George Wickham. I prefer not to discuss him further. Bingley, I entirely understand your indignation. Indeed, I share it so fully that I dare not trust myself to think of the man's villainy. It is better that I say nothing of him, even to you.
A pretty place, this.
Very small.
What has the size to do with it? I think we are in luck to have such charming neighbors. You know, we saw two of the young ladies going through the lane the other day. My Darcy, one of them is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. And the other, the one with the dark eyes, she is uncommonly pretty, don't you think so?
She's tolerable, but fine eyes cannot change family connections.
They had family connections enough to fill all England. It wouldn't make them one jot less handsome.
But it must materially lessen their chances of marrying men of any consideration in the world.
Marrying? You go fast, Darcy.
Perhaps. But I am in no humor to give consequence to young ladies. I'm here to please you, Bingley, and knowing your disposition, I think it's just as well that I came.
Good morning, gentlemen. I am so sorry that Mr. Bennet has gone for his walk.
Good morning, Mrs. Bennet. I am Mr. Bingley, your new neighbour at Netherfield. This is my friend, Mr. Darcy of Pendleton, Derbyshire. Mr. Bennet has been so kind as to call upon us, and we are most happy to have the honour of waiting upon the ladies of his family.
We are delighted to see you, I'm sure. Mr. Bingley, Mr. Darcy, my eldest daughter, Miss Bennet, Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Will not you be seated, gentlemen? I am sure you must like Netherfield, Mr. Bingley. I do not know a place in the country that is equal to Netherfield. You will not think of quitting it in a hurry, I hope, though you have but a short lease.
Whatever I do is done in a hurry, Mrs. Bennet. At present, however, I consider myself as quite fixed here.
It is very pleasant to have Netherfield open once more, although you both must miss London. There is so much gaiety in London.
Yes, in a country neighborhood, you move in a confined and unvarying society.
But people themselves alter so much that there is something new to be observed in them forever.
Then you are a student of character, Miss Elizabeth. It must be an amusing study.
Yes, Lizzie always likes to watch people. And there are plenty of people about, even if you do live in the country. The country is a vast deal pleasanter than London, is it not, Mr. Bingley?
When I am in the country, I never wish to leave it. And when I am in town, it is pretty much the same. They each have their advantages, and I am equally happy in either.
Aye, that is because you have the right disposition. But that gentleman seemed to think the country was nothing at all.
Indeed, Mamma, you quite mistook Mr. Darcy. He only meant that there is not such a variety of people to be met with in the country as in town, which you must acknowledge to be true.
Certainly, my dear, nobody said there was. But as to not meeting with many people in this neighborhood, I believe there are few neighborhoods larger. I know we dine with 24 families.
Yes, there are many fine estates hereabout. Can you see Sir William Lucas' place from the garden?
Oh, yes, there is a fine view of the chimneys from the terrace. Come, Jane, we must show Mr. Bingley Sir William's chimneys.
Would you not also like to see the chimneys, Mr. Darcy?
Thank you. Like yourself, I prefer people to places.
Did I say that?
Not precisely, but I have drawn that conclusion.
Well, I can laugh at people better than places, and I dearly love a laugh.
Isn't that a rather dangerous trait, Miss Bennet?
Certainly, but I hope I never ridicule what is wise or good.
It has been the study of my life to avoid those weaknesses which often expose a strong will to ridicule.
And in your list of weaknesses, do you include such faults as vanity and pride, for instance?
Yes, vanity is a weakness, indeed. But pride, where there's a real superiority of mind, pride will be always under good regulation.
I am perfectly convinced, Mr. Darcy, that you have no defect.
I have made no such pretension, Miss Bennet. I have faults enough. My temper I dare not vouch for. I cannot forget the follies and vices of others against myself. My good opinion once lost is lost forever.
That is a failing indeed. Implacable resentment. It's a shade in a character. But you have chosen your fort well. I really cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me.
There is, I believe, in every disposition a tendency to some particular evil, a natural defect which not even the best education can overcome.
And your defect is a propensity to hate everybody.
And yours to willfully misunderstand them.
The surrounding country is really charming, Mrs. Bennet.
We think so. But you must give us a ball at Netherfield, Mr. Bingley, and then you will see that some of the people who live here are worth knowing.
Certainly, Mrs. Bennet. I had already decided upon it. I told Mr. Darcy only yesterday that as soon as my sister, Miss Bingley, arrived and Nicholas could make white soup enough, I should send out my cards. Did I not, Darcy?
I believe you did.
Well, that is vastly good in you, Mr. Bingley. And then perhaps your friend may change his mind about the country. You didn't come to admire Sir William's chimneys, Mr. Darcy.
I was admiring your daughter's work, madam.
Oh, you should see Jane's work. Lizzie is all for the books, like her father. She is a great reader and has no pleasure in anything else. Jane, show your embroidered parrot to Mr. Bingley.
I do not think Mr. Bingley would be interested, ma'am.
Oh, indeed I should, Miss Bennet. I am very much interested in parrots. Pray show it to me. It is quite wonderful to me how young ladies can have patience to be so very accomplished as they are.
Do you agree with your friend, Mr. Darcy?
I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen young ladies in the whole range of my acquaintance that are really accomplished.
Well, then you must comprehend a great deal in your idea of an accomplished woman.
Perhaps. To deserve the word, a woman must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages. She must also possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her dress and expression. And to all this, she must yet add something more substantial, in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading.
I am no longer surprised by your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder at your knowing any.
Colonel Forster and Mr. Wickham.
Here I am again, Mrs. Bennet. I found that Colonel Forster had a message for the young ladies.
I am delighted to see you. You are just in time to meet our new neighbors. Colonel Forster, Mr. Wickham, Mr. Bingley, Mr. Darcy. Well, well, if ever there was a proud, stiff man.
Mamma!
Mrs. Bennet, I'm sorry that we cannot wait for Mr. Bennet. We were on the way to meet my steward, and we are already late for the appointment.
I am very sorry you must go, Mr. Bingley, but I hope you will come again. We must engage you soon for dinner.
It will be a pleasure.
My dear Miss Elizabeth, I have at this moment found out that there is now in this room a near relation to my patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Will you present me?
Bingley, allow me to present my cousin, Mr. Collins.
My
Mr. Darcy,
dear,
Mr. Collins.
my dear sir, I trust you will pardon me for not having paid my respects before. My total ignorance of your presence here must have plead my apology. I was not informed of it. Is there any message, sir, which I could take from you to my honored patroness, your aunt, or to your fair cousin, Mr. Berg?
Thank you. I will not trouble you so far.
No, it would be no trouble, but an honor and a privilege.
We are already very late, Bingley.
Yes, we have no time to lose.
May I speak to you, madam?
Yes, Hill, yes. Excuse me for a moment. I will return directly.
Oh, Miss Bennet, Miss Elizabeth, here's a song you have promised to sing to me. Pray sing it now, Miss Elizabeth.
Really, Colonel Forster, you must excuse me for today. Jane will play for you instead.
Indeed, I cannot, Lizzie.
Please, Jane.
Oh, do, I beg, Miss Bennet.
How long has Mr. Darcy been in Hertfordshire, Miss Elizabeth?
Only for a very short time, I believe. He comes from Derbyshire, I understand. Has a very large property there.
Yes, his estate is a noble one. Clear 10,000 per annum, I'm well informed on this. I've been connected with Mr. Darcy's family since my infancy.
Indeed.
You may well be surprised, Miss Elizabeth, at this assertion, after seeing the very cold manner of our meeting just now. Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
No, I met him for the first time today. But even on this short acquaintance, I should take him to be an ill-tempered man.
Miss Elizabeth, you have been a witness of Mr. Darcy's treatment of me today, and therefore I feel I must, for my own justification, acquaint you with the facts of my past connection with him.
I shall respect your confidence, Mr. Wickham.
I am sure of it. Mr. Darcy and I were born in the same parish. My own father, who, to be frank, was steward of the Darcy estates, gave up everything to serve the interests of the Darcy family. Mr. Darcy's father was excessively attached to me. I am his godson, and he meant to provide for me amply. I was destined for the church, and he had left to me a most valuable living. But the present Mr. Darcy chose to ignore his father's will and gave the living to another man. This closed for me the career for which I was most fitted, and left me with almost no means of support.
Good heavens! But how could that be? Why did you not seek legal redress?
There was an informality in the terms of the will which gave me no hope from the law. Mr. Darcy's father had relied implicitly upon the honour of his son.
But this is quite shocking. Mr. Darcy deserves to be publicly disgraced.
Sometime or other he will be, but not by me.
This feeling does you honour. But what can have induced Mr. Darcy to behave so cruelly?
Oh, I must attribute it in some measure to his jealousy. His father's uncommon attachment to me irritated him. But the fact is, Miss Elizabeth, as you can see, we are very different men, and he hates me.
To treat in such a manner the godson, the friend, favourite of his father, how abominable.
And yet, Miss Elizabeth, we must try to be just to him. And Mr. Darcy has many good qualities. He can be both liberal and generous. But he has, too, a brother's affection and pride, which makes him a careful guardian of his sister.
Oh, he has a sister?
Oh, yes. You will hear him cried up as the most attentive and best of brothers. Oh, Mr. Darcy can please when he chooses.
Wickham, I fear we must be going.
Thank you for listening to me. It is hard to be misjudged.
Thank you for your confidence. It is well to know the truth.
Well, Miss Elizabeth, I hope we shall see you all at your aunt's on Wednesday. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Bennet. Thank you for the music. Please present my respects to Mrs. Bennet. I am sorry that we cannot wait longer.
Yes, Miss Bennet. Please be sure to give your mother my best regards. Good morning. Oh, Miss Elizabeth, I am most grateful.
Well, have they gone?
Madam, I am just returned from attending on Mr. Darcy. Such a privilege. He was most condescending. He is very like Lady Catherine. I am sure you must have been impressed by his distinguished manners.
Well, really, Mr. Collins.
This meeting is most opportune. May I hope, madam, for your interest in your fair daughter Jane, in the matter on which we were speaking yesterday, I would solicit the honor of a private audience with her this morning.
Certainly, Mr. Collins. But there have been some changes since then. Some things have happened. I think it is right you should know that Jane is very likely to be soon engaged. But there is Elizabeth. I am sure she can have no objection to listening to you.
Then Miss Elizabeth, let it be, madam. I was struck by her attitude of respectful awe when I mentioned the Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Such modesty and humility of mind cannot but recommend her to my patroness.
Yes, my daughter Elizabeth knows what is proper. She will be very happy to listen to you. Shall I call her now?
I think, madam, there should be no further loss of time.
Very well. Jane, I want you upstairs. Lizzie, Mr. Collins has something he wishes to say to you.
Dear madam, Mr. Collins must excuse me. I was just going away myself.
Now, no nonsense, Lizzie. I desire you will stay. Mr. Collins has something very particular to say to you. Come, Jane.
Believe me, my dear Miss Elizabeth, your modesty, so far from doing you any disservice, rather adds to your other perfections. But allow me to assure you that I have your respected mother's permission for this address. My fair cousin, you must have at least surmised that I am about to ask you to become the companion of my life. And perhaps I had better begin by stating my reasons for this decision before I have run away with my feelings on the subject.
Oh, I beg, Mr. Collins.
One moment, please. My reasons for marrying are, first, that I think it the right thing for every clergyman to set the example of matrimony to his parish. Second, I am convinced it will add very greatly to my happiness. Third, it is the particular advice of that very noble lady whom I have the honor of calling patroness.
Believe me, Mr. Collins.
Excuse me. One moment. It remains only to be told why my views were directed to Longbourn. The fact is that, being as I am to inherit this estate after the death of your father, I could not satisfy myself without resolving to choose a wife from among his daughters, that the loss to them might be as little as possible when the melancholy event took place. This has been my motive, my fair cousin, and I flatter myself it will not sink me in your esteem.
Mr. Collins.
One moment. Still. And now, nothing remains for me but to assure you, in the most animated language, of the violence of my affection.
You are too hasty, sir. You forget that I've made no answer. Accept my thanks for the compliment you are paying me. I am very sensible of the honor of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than decline them.
I am not unmindful of the fact that sometimes a young lady's refusal is repeated a second or even a third time. I am, therefore, by no means discouraged by what you have just said, and I hope to lead you to the altar ere long.
Upon my word, sir, your hope is rather an extraordinary one after my declaration. You must pay me the compliment of believing what I say. This matter may be considered, therefore, as definitely settled.
One moment. When I do myself the honor of speaking to you next on this subject, I shall hope to receive a more favorable answer.
Really, Mr. Collins, you puzzle me exceedingly. I know not how to express my refusal in such a way as may convince you of its being one.
You must give me leave to flatter myself, my dear cousin, that your refusals of my address are merely words, of course. I shall choose to attribute them to your wish of increasing my love by suspense, according to the usual practice of elegant females.
Please do not consider me now as an elegant female. I would rather be paid the compliment of being believed sincere. To accept your proposal is absolutely impossible. Can I speak plainer?
You are uniformly charming. But I am persuaded that when my proposals are sanctioned by both your parents, they will not fail of being acceptable. Meanwhile, I may best serve my cause by leaving you to consider the matter by yourself for a while.
Well, Mr. Collins, are we to congratulate each other?
Has
all gone as you could wish?
I have every reason to be satisfied, madam. My cousin has indeed steadily refused this, my first offer, with considerable warmth. But this refusal would naturally flow from her bashful modesty. With your influence behind me, I have no doubt of my ultimate success.
Yes, you may depend upon me, Mr. Collins. I will speak to Lizzie myself directly. She is a very headstrong, foolish girl and does not know her own interest, but I will make her know it.
Pardon me, madam, but if she is really headstrong and foolish, I do not know whether she would altogether be a very desirable wife to a man in my situation. If, therefore, Miss Elizabeth persists in rejecting my suit, perhaps it would be better not to force her into accepting me.
Sir, you quite misunderstand me. Lizzie is only headstrong in such matters as these. In everything else, she is as good-natured a girl as has ever lived. Let me see her alone for a moment. That will be best. Lizzie, what is the meaning of this? Have you refused Mr. Collins?
Yes, Mamma, but please listen.
No, I will not listen. I tell you what, Miss Lizzie, if you take it into your head to go on refusing every offer of marriage in this way, you will never get a husband at all. I am going at once to speak to your father. You will listen to him, perhaps. Oh, there he is now. Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately. You must come and make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, for she vows she will not have him, and if you do not make haste, Mr. Collins will change his mind and not have her.
I have not the pleasure of understanding you. Of what are you talking?
Of Mr. Collins and Lizzie.
Lizzie? I thought it was Jane.
No, it's Lizzie now.
Ah, and what am I to do on the occasion? It seems a hopeless business.
Speak to Lizzie. There she is. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him.
Come here, child. This is an affair of importance. I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage. Is that true?
Yes, Papa, it is.
Very well. And this offer of marriage you have refused?
I have, sir.
Ah, we come down to the point. Your mother insists upon you accepting him. Is that not so, Mrs. Bennet?
Yes, or I will never see her again.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
Well, Darcy, do you approve of the arrangements? Have you anything to suggest? Any criticisms?
I have no criticisms for the arrangements.
But you have for the ball. Yes, I know. Still, I was really obliged to keep my promise.
I'm glad to find that a promise to you is an obligation.
Oh, come, Darcy. I understand. Set your mind at rest. I am going to London with you, although I must say I do not see the necessity for it. I think you are exaggerating the effect of any small attentions of mine toward Miss Bennet. However, we will cling together and fly a common danger.
Common danger?
Yes, common danger. I too have eyes. Where will you match the wit and vivacity of Miss Elizabeth Bennet?
She is indeed charming, and I admit that were it not for the inferiority of her connections, I might be in some danger. But they form for me an insurmountable barrier against any possible peril.
Love laughs at bars, Darcy. Darcy, do you really think you should be silent about Wickham? I really must speak of this again, even at the risk of offending you. I am truly concerned at the foothold this rascal has already gained in the Bennet family. What he has failed to accomplish once, he may succeed in again. These young ladies have no brother to defend them.
Neither have they the wealth to excite Wickham's cupidity. At any rate, I do not wish to be the one to enlighten the neighborhood. Besides, I understand that he has left for Meryton.
Even so,
Ah, here you are. Your sister Georgiana should be here, Mr. Darcy. Charles, you should have insisted on her coming.
I am not in the habit of insisting with Darcy.
Very true. It is vastly pretty, Charles. But I am much mistaken if there are not some among us to whom a ball will be rather a punishment than a pleasure.
If you mean Darcy, he may go to bed, if he pleases, before it begins.
Several of the carriages have arrived, sir, and the guests will soon be entering the ballroom.
Very well. Come, Caroline. We must be at our post. We will leave Darcy to make up his mind whether he will join us later.
Why did I promise to dance with Mr. Darcy just now? Why did I not have more presence of mind?
I dare say you will find him very agreeable.
Heaven forbid. To find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate. Do not wish me such an evil.
I wouldn't be a simpleton, Eliza. You are angry because Wickham is not here. But I wouldn't allow my fancy for him to make me unpleasant in the eyes of a man 10 times his consequence.
My fancy for Wickham, as you choose to call it, is simply my sympathy for a most ill-used man. Also my relief in meeting with good manners and good understanding after the insufferable pride of Mr. Darcy. And the stupid pomposity of that dreadful Mr. Collins. Oh, my dear Charlotte, I've never thanked you half enough for helping us to endure that man. It's so good-natured in you to sacrifice yourself and listen to those interminable speeches of his. I am more obliged to you than I can express.
Don't, Eliza! You're making it so terribly hard for me, but I must tell you, I am engaged to Mr. Collins.
Engaged? Mr. Collins? Oh, Charlotte, you're joking.
No. Indeed, Eliza, I am in most serious earnest. Why should you be so surprised? Do you think it incredible that Mr. Collins should be able to procure any woman's good opinion because he was not so happy as to succeed with you?
No, of course not. And you must forgive me all I've just said. I couldn't possibly have imagined.
No, Eliza. Indeed you could not. And we shall be friends still.
Of course, dear Charlotte. It was only the surprise. You know how fond I am of you. You know I wish you every imaginable happiness.
Yes, I am sure of it. You must be surprised. Very much surprised, as Mr. Collins was wishing to marry you. But, dear Eliza, I hope you will be satisfied with what I have done. I am not romantic. I ask only a comfortable home, and considering Mr. Collins' situation in life, I'm convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people can boast upon entering the marriage state.
Undoubtedly.
And you will come to visit me sometimes. I could not bear to lose you, Eliza.
Surely, Charlotte. We are going to be cousins, you know.
Why, so we are.
I am to have the honor of this reel, I believe, Miss Lucas.
Yes, Colonel Forster.
I think we're being treated abominably ill, Lizzie. It seems that Mr. Wickham has gone off on business somewhere and will not be here at all.
I do not imagine his business would have called him away just now if he had not wished to avoid a certain gentleman.
Why, Mr. Denny, I do believe the reel is half over. I dearly love a reel. We shall miss it altogether. Come.
Oh, the world is surely upside down. Charlotte and Mr. Collins. What a match.
Do not you feel a great inclination, Miss Bennet, to see such an opportunity of dancing a reel? Do not you enjoy the reel, Miss Bennet?
Oh, I heard you before, but I could not immediately determine what to say in reply. You wanted me, I know, to say yes, that you might have the pleasure of despising my taste. But I always delight in overthrowing any kind of scheme of that sort. I have therefore made up my mind to tell you that I do not want to dance a reel at all. Now despise me, if you dare.
I do not dare.
May I have the honor, Miss Bennet?
I do not dance the reel, Colonel Forster.
Oh. The reel is over. This is our dance.
I can guess the subject of your reverie.
I should imagine not.
You are considering how insufferable it would be to pass many evenings in such society. Indeed, I'm quite of your opinion. I was never more annoyed. The insipidity and yet the noise, the nothingness and yet the self-importance of all these people. What would I give to hear your strictures on them?
Your conjecture is totally wrong. I assure you, my mind was more agreeably engaged. I was meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes can bestow.
Indeed. And will you not tell me what lady has the credit of inspiring such reflections?
Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet? I'm all astonishment. How long has she been such a favourite? Pray, when am I to wish you joy?
That is exactly the question which I expected you to ask. A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. I knew you'd be wishing me joy.
Hey, if you are so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled. You will have a charming mother-in-law. Or she will always be at Pemberley with you. Perhaps you might give her a few hints as to the advantage of holding her tongue.
Thank you. Have you anything else to propose for my domestic felicity?
Oh, I fear not. Here comes the fair one, and mamma-in-law as well. I will not intrude on the family party.
I thought this next dance was the one you liked so much, Darcy. Let me find you a partner.
So it is. Thank you. I have a partner.
You must be tired, Miss Bennet. I propose that we sit quietly through this dance. Do you agree?
Yes, indeed. It will be very pleasant. How prettily you've arranged all the rooms, Mr. Bingley.
I'm so glad you think so. I feared they were rather inconvenient for so large a party.
Oh, I find them delightful.
You are always charitable, Miss Bennet. It seems to me you always manage to see the best side of everything. I never knew you to say an ill word about a person or place.
Oh, I fear that is not quite exact. I only try to see things in their best light, perhaps.
See, that is just it. The rest of us rarely try to see things in that way. And so you see, I have proved my case. You are too amiable.
Not for tonight, Mr. Bingley. Everyone is of one mind tonight. There is but one point of view. You are giving nothing but pleasure.
I wish it was so, but... Dear Miss Bennet, I wish to tell you. I must tell you. Miss Bennet, Miss Bennet, if you would please... Miss Bennet, if you please.
Your turn to say something, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance. You ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the rooms or the number of couples.
I assure you, I will say whatever you wish.
Very well. That reply will do for the present. Perhaps by and by I may observe that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones.
Do you talk by rule, then?
Sometimes. One must speak a little, you know. And yet, for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible.
Are you consulting your feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine?
Both. For I've always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are, each of us, of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak, unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room and be handed down to posterity with all the eclat of a proverb.
This is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure. How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. Do you think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly?
I shall not decide on my own performance. I am surprised not to see Mr. Wickham here tonight. I find that he is a great favourite with the officers. He has made many friends among them.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as he may ensure his making friends. Whether he may be equally capable of retaining them is less certain.
He has been unlucky enough to lose your friendship, and in a manner from which he is likely to suffer all his life.
What a charming amusement for young people this dancing is, Mr. Darcy. I consider it one of the first refinements of polished societies. Do you often dance at St. James?
Never, sir.
You have a house in town, I conclude. I had once some thoughts of fixing in town myself, but I did not feel quite certain that the air of London would agree with Lady Lucas. But I must not further interrupt you, sir. I only wish to tell you once more how highly gratified I have been by your superior dancing. Allow me also to say that your fair partner does not disgrace you. It is a great pleasure to see you two together. I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Miss Eliza, shall take place. Oh, what congratulations will flow in then. But let me not interrupt you. You will not thank me, Mr. Darcy, for detaining you from the bewitching converse of that young lady, whose bright eyes are also upbraiding me.
Did he talk? So, Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of.
I do not think we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted any two people who had less to say for themselves. We've tried 2 or 3 subjects already without success, and what we are to talk of next, I cannot imagine.
What think you of books?
Books? No, I'm sure we never read the same, or at least not with the same feelings.
I am sorry you think so. But if that be the case, there can be at least no want of subject. We may compare our different opinions of them.
No, I cannot talk of books at a ball. My mind is always busy with something else.
The present always occupies you in such scenes, does it?
Yes, always. I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that you hardly ever forgave, that your resentment once created was unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created.
I am.
Never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice.
I hope not.
It is particularly incumbent on those who never change their opinions to be secure of judging properly at first.
May I ask to what these questions lead?
Merely to the illustration of your character. I am trying to make it out.
And what is your success?
I do not get on at all. I hear such different accounts of you as puzzle me exceedingly.
I can readily believe that reports may vary greatly with respect to me. And I could wish, Miss Bennet, they were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit on either.
If I do not take your likeness now, I may never have another opportunity.
I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours.
Oh, Mr. Darcy, would you be so good as to go to Charles? He wishes very much to consult with you about some of the table arrangements. You will find him in the dining parlour. That is, if Miss Bennet will permit you.
Certainly.
So, Miss Bennet, I hear that you are quite delighted with George Wickham. He must have told you all a pretty tale. As to Mr. Darcy's using him ill, it is perfectly false. I do not know the particulars, but I do know that George Wickham has treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner. His coming into the county at all is a most insolent thing. I feel very strongly on this point, Miss Bennet, as Mr. Darcy's interests are so intimately associated with our own. We hope Miss Georgiana Darcy may someday be my sister. My brother admires her greatly.
Ah.
Yes, and therefore we resent these falsehoods and this presumption on the part of George Wickham. But really, considering his descent, we could not expect much better. Oh, he's evidently forgotten to tell you that he is the son of old Wickham, steward to the late Mr. Darcy.
His guilt and his descent appear by your account to be the same. I've heard you accuse him of nothing worse than of being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward. And of that, I can assure you, he informed me himself.
Oh. I beg your pardon. Excuse my interference. It was kindly meant.
Insolent girl! Oh, you are much mistaken if you expect to influence me by such a paltry attack as this. I see nothing in it but your own willful ignorance and the malice of Mr. Darcy.
I thought it would be pleasant to have some of the tables here. We must have places together. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, good to see you. Yes.
Mamma, have you heard the news? Mr. Denny has just told me that the regiment is to leave Meryton and go to Brighton. Good heavens, what is to become of us, Mamma?
Are they really going? Oh, well, my love, it is too bad. I know how you feel. I am sure I cried for 2 days together when Colonel Miller's regiment went away 25 years ago. I thought I should have broken my heart.
I am sure I shall break mine. Mamma, might we not all go to Brighton?
Oh, if we only could. But I fear your father will not hear of it.
Oh, Papa is so disagreeable. I am sure a little sea bathing would set me up forever. Wouldn't it, Mr. Denny?
Surely, Miss Lydia. You must manage it in some way.
Well, Lady Lucas, it is hard for a lively young girl like my Lydia to be cooped up in a place where there is so little going on. However, we are not likely to have it so very dull in the future. You know what I mean. Jane and Bingley.
Ah, indeed.
Oh, yes, it is quite settled. Such a charming young man. And Netherfield only 3 miles from Longbourn. And Jane's marrying will be a fine thing for my other girls. They will be sure to meet other rich men who will fall in love with them.
Mamma, be careful, I beg. Mr. Darcy can hear you.
What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him? I am sure we owe him no such particular civility as to be obliged to say nothing he may not like to hear.
For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. What advantage can it be to you to offend Mr. Darcy? You will never recommend yourself to his friend by so doing.
That is enough, Lizzie. I think I can take care of myself. I never knew before it was a crime to speak to one's friends about what everybody can see plainly enough who has eyes in his head. Did you, Sir William?
Our friends usually have very sharp eyes for what is going on, Mrs. Bennet. I have indeed sometimes expected that you would observe what has been going on in our household of late.
Going on? What has been going on, Sir William?
It is only this, Mrs. Bennet. that Lady Lucas and myself have to ask your congratulations on our very great satisfaction in the recent engagement of our daughter, Charlotte.
Charlotte? Engaged? Why, who in the world is going to marry her?
The gentleman whom my daughter has honored with her hand is your husband's cousin, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins? Marry your Charlotte? Oh, good Lord, Sir William, how can you tell such a story? Do not you know that Mr. Collins is going to marry my Lizzie? Or one of my other girls?
Well, really, Mrs. Bennet.
What I have told you is quite true nevertheless, Mrs. Bennet. The whole matter was settled before Mr. Collins returned to Hunsford. I am sorry we are not to receive your good wishes.
Oh, but you are, Sir William. Charlotte has already told me all about her engagement, and we shall be most happy to welcome her as a cousin.
Thank you, Miss Elizabeth. I am sure other congratulations will shortly be in order.
So, Charlotte has told you, has she? Well, I don't believe a word of it. I am sure Mr. Collins has been taken in. Well, I trust they will never be happy together, and I hope the match will be broken off. And you are the cause of the whole mischief, Lizzie. I think I have been barbarously used by you all.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I should like to propose the health of Mr. Bingley. To Mr. Bingley, may the pleasure which he has given us all tonight be but a foretaste of the future happiness which he will both receive and give this community.
And may I be allowed to further express the sentiments of this community by proposing another toast, in which I am sure you will all join me with enthusiasm? To the Master of Netherfield, may he retain that title from his present fortunate youth to his future green and honored old age.
Mr. Bingley.
Mr. Bingley.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I really cannot tell you how much I am touched by the very kind words of Colonel Forster and Sir William. And I only wish that I deserved them. I did not like to speak of such a painful thing on an occasion like this, and so I have told no one of the fact that I am about to leave Netherfield.
Leave?
We just arrived.
Yes, it is a very sudden decision, but important interests have made it necessary for me to leave Netherfield.
But only for a time, Mr. Bingley. Let us hope it will only be a temporary separation.
Why, surely, Mr. Bingley, you will be back again very soon.
No, I am afraid my returning at all is extremely uncertain. In fact, I expect to leave Netherfield permanently.
Oh, my dear Mr. Bingley.
This is indeed a calamity.
Good Lord, Lizzie, poor Jane. What are we supposed to...
Mama!
But, my friends, nobody knows what may happen. We shall all undoubtedly meet again sometime, and meanwhile you must not let what I have said spoil your pleasure. We must have another dance together.
Capital idea.
Oh, yes, capital. Do you not think so, Mr. Darcy?
Miss Bingley, may I have the pleasure?
Miss Bennet, will you grant me the happiness, the final happiness of my stay at Netherfield?
Thank you.
May I have the honor, Miss Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. I'm indisposed.
Is this the cluster you wish, Miss Bennet?
Thank you.
May not I have one as my reward, Miss Bennet?
Is not accomplishment its own reward?
And is not the power to be generous the highest reward that can be given to any accomplishment?
Oh, surely. And so you would have to be generous and get me more roses. Then we should each of us have to invent new speeches, and so we should never be done until we were ready to print a phrase book. However, you have certainly won your rose.
Thank you. That phrase book is a capital idea, Miss Bennet. Nothing could please me better than such an occupation. It would really be a charity, for Darcy is such a dull fellow these days, I really don't know what to do with myself.
We should hardly have time for such a project. You say that you and Mr. Darcy are to leave Lady Catherine on Saturday.
Yes, if Darcy doesn't put it off again. I'm at his disposal, you know. He arranges the business just as he pleases.
I do not know anybody who seems more to enjoy the power of doing as he pleases than Mr. Darcy. I imagine your cousin brought you down with him chiefly for the sake of having somebody at his disposal. I wonder he does not marry and secure lasting convenience of that kind. But perhaps his sister does well for the present, and as she is under his sole care, he may do what he likes with her.
No, that is an advantage which he must share with me. I am joined with him in the guardianship of Miss Darcy.
Are you indeed? And pray, what sort of a guardian do you make? Does your charge give you much trouble? Young ladies of her age are sometimes a little difficult to manage, and if she has the true Darcy spirit, she may like to have her own way.
Why, what? Why do you suppose Miss Darcy is likely to give us any uneasiness, Miss Bennet?
Nothing at all. You need not be frightened. I never heard any harm of her. She is a great favourite with a lady of my acquaintance. Miss Bingley? I think I have heard you say that you knew Miss Bingley.
I know her a little. Her brother is a pleasant gentleman-like man. He's a great friend of Darcy's.
Oh yes, Mr. Darcy is uncommonly kind to Mr. Bingley and takes a prodigious deal of care of him.
Care of him? Yes, I really believe Darcy does take care of him. From something he has told me, I have reason to think Bingley very much indebted to him. But I ought to beg his pardon, for I have no right to suppose that Bingley was the person meant.
What is it you mean?
It is a circumstance which, of course, Darcy could not wish to be generally known, because if it were to get round to the lady's family, it would be an unpleasant thing.
You may depend upon my not mentioning it.
And remember, I haven't much reason for supposing it to be Bingley. What he told me was merely this, that he congratulated himself on having lately saved a friend from the inconveniences of a most imprudent marriage. And I only suspected it to be Bingley from believing him to be the kind of young man to get into a scrape of that sort.
Did Mr. Darcy give you his reasons for this interference?
Oh, I understood there were some very strong objections against the lady.
Indeed. And what arts did he use to separate them?
He did not talk to me of his own arts. He only told me what I have now told you.
I do not see what right Mr. Darcy had to decide on the propriety of a friend's inclination. But as we know none of the particulars, it is not fair to condemn him. It is not to be supposed that there was much affection in the case.
That is not an unnatural surmise. And I believe Darcy told me that he did not think that the lady, at least, was very deeply concerned in the matter. However, to lessen the affection on either side is to lessen the honour of my cousin's triumph, very sadly.
Your cousin's triumph?
Yes, Mr. Darcy. I think I saw Colonel Fitzwilliam go up the garden path a few moments ago. Oh, no, Mr. Darcy, you're too kind, really.
Pray, allow me.
Ah, here he is. Good morning, Colonel Fitzwilliam. Pray, let me have the basket now, Mr. Darcy.
Good morning, Miss Bennet. Fitzwilliam, I thought I might find you here.
Yes, I have been so fortunate as to secure some of Mrs. Collins' early roses for Miss Bennet.
Really? Have they already opened?
A very few of them. But Colonel Fitzwilliam was obliged to climb very near to the sun to get me these.
And you see, I have my reward.
Colonel Fitzwilliam might not have won his prize so easily, Miss Bennet. Had there been others in the field?
Ah, no, Mr. Darcy. I cannot lessen Colonel Fitzwilliam's achievement by admitting any such possibility.
Thank you, Miss Bennet.
Well, surely my roses will have to bloom their prettiest this season in return for all the attention they have received. Will not you be seated, gentlemen?
Thanks, no, Mrs. Collins. I merely stopped for Colonel Fitzwilliam, but perhaps his rose gathering has caused him to abandon our project of taking a walk together this morning.
By no means, Darcy. That pleasure has only been deferred.
Very good, then. We will go at once, if Mrs. Collins and Miss Bennet will pardon this hasty call.
Certainly, Mr. Darcy. Now, Eliza, we must get to our work and have a comfortable chat. You've been here nearly 2 weeks and we really haven't had a good talk yet.
Yes, you promised me a quiet visit, Charlotte. I find you are more lively here than we are at Longbourn.
But how could I have anticipated the arrival of here 2 very attentive young gentlemen? It is really quite a surprising coincidence. Or else Mr. Darcy has timed his visit to his aunt very cleverly. As to these daily visits to the parsonage, you may be sure I do not take to myself the credit of them. Neither of these young gentlemen would ever come so often to see me. I have you to thank, Eliza, for this civility.
You may thank a lack of occupation on their part. You know very well my opinion of Mr. Darcy.
Yes, you have often expressed it. And do we hold the same opinion of Colonel Fitzwilliam?
Oh, Colonel Fitzwilliam.
And so Jane is once more at home after her visit in London, and Lydia has gone to Brighton after all? However did she manage to persuade your father?
Oh, Lydia was so determined upon it that she and Mamma gave my father no peace till they had teased him to consent. But I'm very sorry. Lydia's too foolish, too ignorant and willful to be trusted away from home. I only hope that no harm will come of it.
And is Mr. Wickham still with the regiment?
Yes. He went with it to Brighton.
I hear that he is thinking of marrying Miss King, since she has just received a legacy of £10,000. I should be sorry to think that our friend was mercenary.
A man in distressed circumstances has not time for all those elegant decorums which other people may observe. If Miss King does not object to it, why should we?
Her not objecting does not justify him.
Well, have it your way. He should be mercenary and she should be foolish. Mr. Wickham's worst fault, after all, is his power of being agreeable. Thank heaven we both of us know some men who haven't one agreeable quality. Stupid men are the only ones worth knowing.
Well, Eliza, that speech savours a little of disappointment. And you say that Jane is not in her usual spirits?
Yes.
And she's looking poorly?
Yes, very.
Did she see much of the Bingleys in London?
She saw nothing of them. Oh, Charlotte, I have just had all my suspicions confirmed.
Your suspicions?
Yes. There has been an arrangement in all this. Mr. Bingley has been kept away from Jane by... Oh.
Don't imagine any such nonsense, Eliza. A young man like Mr. Bingley so easily falls in love with a pretty girl for a few weeks, and when accident separates them, so easily forgets her that this sort of inconstancy is very frequent.
We do not suffer from accident, Charlotte. A young man of independent fortune does not suddenly decide of his own free will to think no more of a girl with whom he was violently in love.
But were they so violently in love?
Yes. I never saw a more promising inclination. When Mr. Bingley would talk to no one else, would look at no one else. Is not general incivility the very essence of love?
It is usually a good test. But if Jane did not return his affection, it really did not seem to me that there was anything violent in Jane's attitude. I could never see that she showed any extreme affection for Bingley.
Well, I know that she was very much in love with him, and it showed her affection as much as her nature would allow. If Bingley didn't see it, he must have been a simpleton. No, the real trouble was that she didn't see him often enough, at least, to make her understand his character.
Oh, if Jane were married to Bingley tomorrow, I should think she had as good a chance of happiness as if she was studying him for a 12-month. It is far better to know as little as possible about the person with whom you are to pass your life.
In some cases, that is undoubtedly true.
A very charming domestic picture. My dear, I have found some fine early radishes. I thought it would be a graceful attention on your part to send some of these to Mr. Berg.
I fear the apothecary might object.
True, they might not be suitable, but they are very fine radishes. Miss Elizabeth, I am very successful in my gardening. I consider the work I do in my garden to be one of my most respectable pleasures. Lady Catherine is always ready to encourage me in it, and my dear Charlotte is ever willing that I should leave her side for the sake of this helpful exercise. It is indeed a pity that Mr. Berg is not well enough to enjoy them. My dear Charlotte has doubtless told you, Miss Elizabeth, of the alliance which is in prospect between Mr. Berg and Mr. Darcy. This extreme delicacy of constitution would seem to be the only bar to their happiness.
Yes, Charlotte has told me that Mr. Berg is sickly. She will make Mr. Darcy a proper wife.
I do not think the kingdom can boast a grander scene than the one now spread before our eyes. This garden, that park with rosings in the distance, do you not think my dear Charlotte is most fortunately placed, Miss Elizabeth?
Most fortunately, Mr. Collins.
And when you have seen Lady Catherine, you will be even more impressed, I am sure. We can hardly expect her to call upon you. This illness of Mr. Berg would prevent it. But I am quite confident that you will receive an invitation to drink tea of a Sunday evening with her, after Mr. Darcy and his cousin are gone, of course. And we may later have an invitation to dinner, although I would not for the world arouse in you false hopes which may be shattered.
Oh, Mrs. Collins, Lady Catherine's carriage is turning down the lane.
No, Lady Catherine, at this hour? What amazing condescension. But my dear, I am quite unprepared. My habiliment, I would be not wanting in respect. What shall I do?
Go make yourself ready, Mr. Collins. We will do the same. Go.
Do not make yourself uneasy about your own apparel, Miss Elizabeth. Lady Catherine is far from requiring that elegance in us which becomes herself and daughter.
Do go, Mr. Collins. Lady Catherine will be here in an instant.
Are you going to make any changes to your dress, Charlotte? Do you wish me to do so?
Well, Eliza, if you wouldn't mind, I should like you to put on your sprigged muslin. In spite of what Mr. Collins says, I know it would please him. I have no time to change. Is my collar straight? Go. Mr. Collins! Mr. Collins!
You keep too many hens, Mrs. Collins. There is just a certain number which are profitable. Beyond that, there is waste. A clergyman's wife should set an example of thrift. You should have asked my advice.
Mrs. Collins will in the future regulate her poultry yard according to your directions, Lady Catherine, if you would be so condescending as to give them.
Yes, thank you, Lady Catherine.
Will your ladyship not take some refreshment?
Oh, yes, let me fetch you a cup of tea.
No, I wish nothing. But you may go, Mr. Collins, and see if Jones is walking the horses up and down. I do not trust Jones.
With great pleasure, your ladyship.
I thought you had a visitor, Mrs. Collins.
Yes, your ladyship, I have. It is my friend, Miss Elizabeth Bennet. She is a cousin of Mr. Collins and a neighbour of ours in Hertfordshire.
I have heard about her. Fitzwilliam says she is a very genteel, pretty sort of girl.
Indeed, she is, Lady Catherine.
Well, where is she?
She has gone to make a little change in her dress before presenting herself to your ladyship.
Oh, very proper, very proper.
I am delighted to hear that Mr. Berg is better, Lady Catherine.
Yes, thank you. She has very greatly improved. Well, Miss Bennet takes her time.
I'm sure she will be here in a moment. Oh, here she is. Lady Catherine, Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
Oh, how do you do, Miss Bennet? You are younger than I thought.
Indeed.
You know my nephew, Mr. Darcy?
Yes, I met him in Hertfordshire.
And you know Colonel Fitzwilliam?
I've only met Colonel Fitzwilliam since coming here.
Has your governess left you?
My sisters and I never had a governess, madam.
No governess? Oh, I never heard such a thing. Your mother must have been quite a slave to your education.
I assure you she was not, Lady Catherine.
Well, if I had known your mother, I should have advised her most strenuously to engage a governess. I should have seen to it myself. Oh, go on with your work, Mrs. Collins. A clergyman's wife should set an example of industry. Oh, I will send you some more of the parish petticoats to hem, Mrs. Collins. Go on with your work, Miss Bennet. Young ladies should never be idle. You have sisters, have you not?
Yes, madam.
Are any of them out?
All, madam.
What? All out at once? Oh, very odd. Out before the oldest is married? Your sisters may be married before you. Oh, you must not be too ambitious. A good many young girls have lost their chances through being too ambitious. Oh, Mrs. Collins, I suppose you have shown Miss Bennet this print of Pemberley, Mr. Darcy's place?
Yes, Lady Catherine.
Pemberley is one of the finest places in England. My daughter Anne is very fond of it, which is fortunate since she will probably spend the most of her life there.
Most fortunate, your ladyship.
You see my nephews here often, Miss Bennet?
Yes, very often, Lady Catherine.
Well, idle young gentlemen often make very foolish use of their time. My daughter, Miss de Bourgh, is unfortunately not able to accompany Mr. Darcy on his walks as often as both of them could desire.
I think your ladyship's mind may be quite at rest about the horses. Joan seems to have them well in hand.
Oh, I am glad you have come back, Mr. Collins. I am going to ask you and Mrs. Collins to go and see the new cottages with me. I shall take you in the carriage. You had better put on a plain bonnet, Mrs. Collins.
By all means, your ladyship.
Are you quite ready to go, Mr. Collins?
Assuredly, your ladyship. Quite.
Miss Bennet, I should advise you to write to your family while we are gone. Oh, yes, that will do very well.
We shall not be gone very long, Eliza.
Oh, I am not sure of that, Mrs. Collins, but I have provided an occupation for Miss Bennet during our absence. Good morning, Miss Bennet. I may ask you later for dinner.
Good morning, madam. Really? I might have spared myself some of the mortifications I have felt for the shortcomings of my own family. The contrast is not such a violent one after all. However, Lady Catherine can give good advice. I really should write to my poor dear Jane.
I am here again, Miss Bennet. I saw Mr. and Mrs. Collins drive away with my aunt. I have something which I must say to you. Miss Bennet, in vain have I struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. Miss Bennet, I can well understand your own astonishment at this declaration, for I am amazed at it myself. My feeling for you has taken possession of me against my will, my reason, and almost against my character.
Sir!
Oh, understand me, I beg of you. For yourself alone, my admiration is only too natural. I share it with everyone who has the happiness of knowing you. But, pardon me, for it pains me to offend you. The defects of your nearest relations, the total lack of propriety, so frequently betrayed by your family, has so opposed my judgment to my inclination that has required the utmost force of passion on my part to put them aside. But, my dear Miss Bennet, your triumph is complete. Your own loveliness stands out the fair in its contrast to your surroundings. And I now hope that the strength of my love may have its reward in your acceptance of my hand.
Mr. Darcy, in such cases as this, it is, I believe, the established mode to express a sense of obligation for the sentiments avowed, however unequally they may be returned. If I could feel gratitude now, I would thank you, but I cannot. I've never desired your good opinion, and you've certainly bestowed it most unwillingly.
And that is all the reply which I have the honor of expecting. I might perhaps wish to be informed why, with so little endeavor at civility, I am thus rejected, but it's of small importance.
I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you chose to tell me that you like me against your will, against your reason, and even against your character. Was not this some excuse for incivility?
I have very clearly explained that the objections which appealed to my reason applied entirely to your family and in no respect to yourself.
I am part of my family, Mr. Darcy. And allow me to say, since I've had the opportunity of comparing my relations with your own, the contrast is not as marked as I have been led to suppose. But, aside from all this, do you think any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who has been the means of ruining, perhaps forever, the happiness of a most beloved sister? Can you deny that you have done this?
I have no wish of denying that I did everything in my power to separate my friend from your sister. I did not, indeed, anticipate that I should involve either of them in misery of any kind. On your sister's side, at least, I was never able to discover any symptoms of peculiar regard for Mr. Bingley. While, for every reason, I must rejoice in my success with my friend. Toward him I have been kinder than toward myself.
Your arrogance in calmly deciding the extent of other people's sentiments does not surprise me. It is of a piece with your whole nature. But your interference in my sister's concerns is not all. Long before it had taken place, my opinion of you was fixed. Your character was unfolded in the recital which I received months ago from Mr. Wickham. What can you have to say on that subject? In what imaginary act of friendship can you here defend yourself?
You take an eager interest in that gentleman.
Who that knows what his misfortunes have been can help feeling an interest in him.
His misfortunes. Yes, his misfortunes have been great indeed.
And of your infliction. You have reduced him to his present state of poverty. You have withheld the advantages which you must know to have been designed for him. You've done all this, and yet you can treat the mention of his misfortunes with contempt and ridicule.
And this is your opinion of me. This is the estimation in which you hold me. I thank you for explaining it so fully. Perhaps if I were to divulge the truth regarding Mr. Wickham, I might give you as a great surprise as you have given me. I do not care to go into particulars, but in justice to myself, I must tell you that the man whom you consider a martyr is a profligate with the most vicious propensities, a man who should never enter your home, for his presence there is a constant source of danger.
Mr. Darcy!
I am ready to give you the full proofs of all I have said, Miss Bennet, whenever you may so desire, although I would gladly forget all the miserable circumstances myself, and no obligation less than the present should induce me to unfold them to any human being.
Your judgment in the matter of my sister's happiness has given me a gauge by which I can measure your fairness to a man who has been so unfortunate as to offend you. My faith in Mr. Wickham is unshaken.
I shall take what you have said, Miss Bennet, as a reflection on my judgment alone. Otherwise, my veracity would be at stake, and this I am sure you did not intend. Indeed, I understand your whole position perfectly. I have erred in the manner of my declaration. Your bitter accusations might have been suppressed had I concealed my truth. It's my own fault. I have wounded your pride. I should have flattered you into the belief that I was impelled by inclination, by illusion, by reflection, by everything. But disguise of every sort is my abhorrence. Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connections?
And you expect me to rejoice in your proposal that I ally myself to the conceit and impertinence of yours? No, Mr. Darcy. The manner of your declaration has affected me in only one way. It has spared me any concern I might otherwise have felt had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike way. However, you could not have made me the offer of your hand in any possible way that would have tempted me to accept it. I had not known you a month before I was certain you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
You have said quite enough. I perfectly comprehend your feelings and have now only to be ashamed of what my own have been. Forgive me for taking so much of your time and accept my best wishes for your health and happiness.
Oh, to insult my family, to think I was ready to fall on my knees in gratitude for his condescension, to easily dispose of Jane's happiness and yet to be really in love with me in spite of every obstacle. Oh! Jane! Jane, I wish you were here.
Here is a letter, miss. The express just brought it.
A letter for me?
Yes, miss.
It is from Jane. Dearest Lizzie, I have bad news for you, and it cannot be delayed. An express came to us last night from Colonel Forster. He told us that Lydia had run away from Brighton with one of his officers. To own the truth, with Wickham. He first thought that they had gone to Scotland, but, oh, Lizzie, it is far worse than that. We know now that Wickham never intended to go there or to marry Lydia at all. Colonel Forster has been here today. He says Wickham is not a man to be trusted. He has left Brighton terribly in debt, and his record is bad in every way. Oh, Lizzie, our distress is very great. My father has gone to London with Colonel Forster instantly to try to discover the fugitives. It is hard to ask you to shorten your visit, but we are in such distress that... Oh, where is the express? I must write. No, I must go. Oh, Lydia and Wickham. I must send someone for a carriage. Martha! The carriage! Oh, Colonel Fitzwilliam, is that you?
What is the matter, Miss Bennet?
Oh, Colonel Fitzwilliam, the express. Oh, can you get me a carriage? I've just had bad news from home, and I must return at once, and Mr. Collins is away. Will you be so kind?
Oh, certainly, my dear Miss Bennet. Of course, but... Darcy, don't wait for me. I can't join you now. Miss Bennet is in distress.
Miss Bennet, good God, what is the matter?
Well, Miss Bennet has just had bad news from home. She wishes to return and desires a carriage.
Do you go for the carriage, Fitzwilliam? Get one from the stables. Go, I will remain with Miss Bennet. Shall I call the maid, Miss Bennet? A glass of wine, shall I get it for you? You are very ill.
No, I thank you. There's nothing the matter with me. I'm quite well. I'm only distressed by some dreadful news I've just received from Longbourn.
Oh, I am sorry, very indeed.
I've just had a letter from Jane with such dreadful news.
I am grieved, Miss Bennet, grieved indeed.
Mr. Darcy, you were right. If only I believed you and others, but I could not believe it.
What is it, my dear Miss Bennet? What has happened?
Oh, I cannot tell it. But everyone will know. My sister, Lydia, has eloped. Has thrown herself into the power of Mr. Wickham. She has no money, nothing that could tempt him to... She is lost forever.
Good God, Miss Bennet. Your sister and Wickham. Oh, this is my fault. I should have realized this danger. I should have spoken. My own wretched experience with this man should have been told.
What do you mean?
Mr. Wickham attempted the same plan with my own sister 2 years ago. She was an ignorant, innocent, trusting girl of 15. Happily, his villainy was discovered and prevented, but, oh, I should have told you. Had his character been known, this could not have happened.
No, you tried to tell me, Mr. Darcy. Everyone tried to warn me, but I could not believe it, and now it is too late. Too late.
Let us hope not. Is what you have told me certain, absolutely certain?
Yes, they left Brighton together on Sunday night.
And what has been done or attempted to recover your sister?
My father has gone to London. He will beg my Uncle Gardiner's assistance, but nothing can be done. How is such a man to be worked on? How is there even to be discovered? I'm not the smallest hope. No, it is all horrible.
Miss Bennet, I have made a wretched mistake in all this. Would to heaven that anything could be said or done on my part that might give reparation or offer consolation to such distress. Mr. and Mrs. Collins are returning. What would you wish me to do?
I do not know. I do not know.
You really wish to return home at once?
Oh, yes. Yes, at once. Take me home, Mr. Darcy. Take me home.
Dear Mamma, do try and take some of this nice gruel. You will be ill if you do not eat something.
Yes, do. I beg of you, madam. Now that you are once more in the air, if you will only take some food, you will feel much better.
How can I feel better? I must be ill. It is all very well for the rest of you, now that this disgrace has been brought upon me. If I could have gone to Brighton with all my family, this would never have happened. But poor dear Lydia had nobody to take care of her. Oh, that villainous Wickham! I am sure there was some great neglect or other somewhere, for Lydia is not the kind of girl to run away with a man. Poor Lydia! Poor dear child!
Oh, Mamma, try to be calm.
Yes, madam, this excitement is so bad for you.
How can I help being excited? You have no feelings. Here is Mr. Bennet, gone away, and I know he will fight that abominable Wickham and be killed. And then what is to become of us all? The Collinses will turn us out before Mr. Bennet is cold in his grave.
Mamma, do not have such terrific ideas.
No, indeed, madam, you must not indeed.
But Jane, Lydia need not wait for wedding clothes. Don't let her even give directions till she has seen me, for she doesn't know where the best warehouses are. Oh, and Jane, keep your father from fighting that hateful Wickham. Tell him what a dreadful state I am in.
Yes, Mamma.
Where are you going? Don't leave me alone. Where is Lizzie?
She has gone down the road to meet the post. She hopes to bring you good news.
She had better stay home and be of some help. She's only just got home and now she leaves me. But nobody thinks of me. Nobody knows what I suffer. I have such tremblings and flutterings all over me. Such spasms in my side and pains in my head and such beatings at my heart. You might try and do something ill. Where is my soothing draught?
Here, madam. No, I must have left it in your room. I will run fetch it.
Oh, Mamma, Lizzie is running up the drive. She's smiling. She has good news, I'm sure.
Take care, Jane. You are exciting me. Oh, my poor nose.
Oh, good news! Good news! Jane, Mamma, they are married.
Oh, Lizzie!
You are sure, Lizzie? Don't excite me. You are sure.
My dear Aunt Gardner has written me all about it. They are really married.
Oh, my dear Lydia! She's really married. I shall see her again. But how did it happen, Lizzie?
Well, Father and my uncle succeeded in finding Lydia. Our aunt does not tell me just how it was done.
And your father found that they were married after all. I told him.
No, Mamma, they were not married, and they had no idea of being. No, Father and Uncle insisted upon it. They were married only yesterday at St. Clement's Church.
Oh, St. Clement's. Fine.
And my dear good uncle has arranged to have all Mr. Wickham's debts paid, and Father is to settle an allowance on Lydia.
But where are they? What are they going to do?
Father is coming home at once. At first he would not consent to let Lydia and Wickham come to us, but my aunt and uncle urged it, and so they are coming here too.
At once?
Yes, directly. Today.
Oh, my dear Lydia, how I long to see her, and to see my dear Wickham too. But the clothes, the wedding clothes! I must write to Sister Gardner about them directly.
Mamma, there is plenty of time for that.
Well, perhaps so. My dear, dear Lydia, how merry we shall all be together. I am so happy. Lydia married. She is Mrs. Wickham. How well it sounds. Oh, my dear Jane, I must see about the clothes. We will settle about with your father about the money later. Oh, I'm in such a flutter. Here comes Hill. My dear Hill, have you heard the news? Miss Lydia is married and coming home directly. Yes, you shall all have a bowl of punch to make merry for her wedding, and I'm going into the house to write about the clothes. No, Jane, you stay where you are. I know what I'm about. Come, Hill. Think of it, Mrs. Wickham.
Oh, Lizzie, how relieved and happy we should be. Is not it wonderful? Are you sure it's true? Have you told us all?
Yes, Jane, it is true. They are really married. In spite of Lydia's folly and Wickham's wretched character, we are to rejoice.
May not I read the letter, Lizzie?
No, dear, not now. I'm very sorry now that in my agitation I told Mr. Darcy about this wretched affair. Now that it has come out so well, he need never have known anything about it. It would have saved me a great deal of mortification.
But how would you ever have explained things to Mr. Collins and Charlotte without his help? Mr. Darcy made everything so smooth and plausible for your sudden departure.
Yes, that is true.
Really, Lizzie, I think I shall have to take up the cudgels in Mr. Darcy's defence. His kindness for you has quite won my heart. Why can you see no good in Mr. Darcy, Lizzie? You were always so full of excuses for Wickham. Though it is true, his open and delightful manners deceived us all. Lizzie, have you heard that Mr. Bingley is back in Netherfield?
Oh, Jane, no. When did he come? Have you seen him?
No, I hardly expect to see him.
Yes, you will, if he has returned. Oh, I understand. My darling Jane, you are going to be very happy.
Lizzie, dear, don't. That is all over now. And besides, I don't want to be happy unless you can be too.
Oh, 40 Mr. Bingleys could not make me happy. Till I have your disposition, I never can have happiness. No, let me shift for myself. Perhaps if I have very good luck, I may meet with another Mr. Collins in time.
Mr. Bennet has returned, madam, and is looking for you.
Oh, Papa returned.
Where is he, Harris? Oh, there he comes. Papa!
Are they really married, Papa?
Yes, that misfortune is well settled on them. They are married fast enough.
And where are they? When will they be here?
I should say they will be here directly. I didn't care to travel with them, but they are not far behind. Only just far enough to keep out of the dust of my post-chase.
Dear Papa, how you must have suffered.
Say nothing of that. Who should suffer but myself? It is my own doing, and I ought to feel it.
You must not be too severe upon yourself.
You very, very well warned me against such an evil. No, Lizzie. Let me once in my life feel how much I have been to blame. The impression will pass away soon enough.
Papa, how did you persuade them to marry?
Oh, I didn't persuade them. I haven't the means. It's all your uncle's doing. He managed to buy Wickham for us.
Oh, dear good uncle.
But there are two things that I very much want to know. One is how much money your uncle has laid down to bring it about, and the other is how I am ever to pay him.
But my uncle did not do it all.
My Aunt Gardiner has written to me that you are to give Lydia an allowance.
Yes, 100 a year. Do you think that any man in his proper senses would marry Lydia on so slight a temptation as 100 a year?
That is very true, though it had not occurred to me before. It must be my uncle's doing. Generous man! I'm afraid he has distressed himself. A small sum could not do this.
No, Wickham's a fool if he takes Lydia for a farthing less than £10,000. I should be sorry to think so ill of him in the very beginning of our relationship.
£10,000! Heaven forbid. How is one half such a sum to be repaid?
That is what I should like to know.
You come back from
Wickham! Surely I hear voices. Why, they have come. There are Lydia and Wickham.
I will go to the library. I shall receive their congratulations later. You know, I'm prodigiously fond of Wickham, Lizzie. I defy even Sir William Lucas himself to produce a more valuable son-in-law.
Well, Jane, well, Lizzie, here we are.
My sister, Jane. My sister, Elizabeth.
Good gracious, here I am again. I am sure I had no thought of being married when I went away, though I thought it would be great fun if I was. Why don't you take the boxes in, Harris? Oh, Wickham, have you seen my pink flowered bandbox? No, it's not here. Oh, Wickham, do go fetch it. You know, 'tis the box with the white satin hat for you bought for me. I wouldn't lose it for the world. Go.
Certainly, my dear. You see how eagerly I embrace my new opportunities.
Oh, girls, I am dying to give you an account of my wedding.
I think there cannot be too little said on that subject.
La, you are strange. But Jane wants to hear, I know. Anyway, I want to tell you. Well, there was such a fuss. My aunt was preaching and talking away to me all the time while I was dressing, just as though she were giving a sermon, but I didn't hear one word in 10 of it all. I was thinking of my dear Wickham. I longed to know if he would be married in his blue coat. Anyway, when we got to the church, my uncle gave me quite a fright after we were there, because he was so late, and he was supposed to give me away, you know. But then, if he hadn't come, Mr. Darcy might have done as well.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, yes, Darcy was there. He came along with Wickham. Oh, but gracious me! I quite forgot. I ought not to have said a word about it. I promised them as faithfully. What will Wickham say? It was to have been such a secret.
If it was to be a secret, Lydia, say not another word on the subject. We shall ask you no questions.
Thank you, for if you did, I should certainly tell you all, and then Wickham would be angry. Oh, there is Mamma!
My dear Lydia! Oh, and my dear Wickham!
Oh, Mamma, are you not glad to see us? Do all the people hereabouts know that I am married? I feared they might not, and so I just let my hand rest on the window frame outside the carriage so that everybody could see my wedding ring, and then I bowed and I smiled like everything.
You may be sure, my dear, that everybody will rejoice with us in our good luck. Your marriage is a great compensation to me after all my disappointment about Jane and Lizzie. I do not blame Jane, for she would have got Mr. Bingley if she could. But Lizzie, oh, Lydia, it is very hard to think she might even now have been Mrs. Collins. But how about your clothes?
Oh, I have a lot already. You may be sure I would not forget them.
But you didn't know the best warehouses. Well, never mind. We will see to that later. Now, you must all come in and have dinner. You must be famished. Come, girls. Come, my dear Wickham.
Jane, I take your place now. I go in first because I am a married woman.
Will not you come into the house, madam?
No, I prefer to remain here. Tell Miss Elizabeth Bennet that a lady wishes to see her at once. Remember, I cannot be kept waiting.
Yes, madam.
Oh, insufferable impudence! Conceited little minx! She shall have a piece of my mind. Miss Bennet, you can be at no loss to understand the reason of my journey hither. Your own heart, your own conscience must tell you why I come.
Indeed, you are mistaken, madam. I am not at all able to account for you being here.
Miss Bennet, you ought to know that I am not to be trifled with. I have just been told that Miss Elizabeth Bennet would in all likelihood be soon married to my nephew, Mr. Darcy. Though I know it to be a scandalous falsehood, I instantly resolved on setting off for this place that I might make my sentiments known to you.
If you believed it impossible to be true, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far. What could your ladyship propose by it?
At once to insist upon having such a report universally contradicted.
Your coming to Longbourn to see me and my family will be rather a confirmation of it, if indeed such a report is in existence.
If? Do you then pretend to be ignorant of it? Do you not know that such a report is spread about?
I never heard that it was.
Oh, and can you likewise declare that there is no foundation for it?
Your ladyship may ask questions which I shall choose not to answer.
Miss Bennet, I insist upon being satisfied. Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage?
Your ladyship has declared it to be impossible.
It ought to be so. But your arts and allurements may have made him forget what he owes to himself and his family. You may have drawn him in.
If I have, I shall be the last person to confess it.
Miss Bennet, do you know who I am? I have not been accustomed to such language as this. I am Mr. Darcy's own aunt, and am entitled to know all of his dearest concerns.
But you are not entitled to know mine.
Let me be rightly understood. This match can never take place. No, never. Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now, what have you got to say?
Only this, that if it is so, you can have no reason to suppose Mr. Darcy will make an offer to me.
The engagement between them is of a peculiar kind. While in their cradles, my sister and I planned their union. Do you pay no regard to the wishes of his friends? Do you not see that honor, decorum, nay, interest forbid you from marrying my nephew? Yes, interest, Miss Bennet. For you will be slighted and despised by everyone connected with him.
These are heavy misfortunes, but the wife of Mr. Darcy must have such extraordinary sources of happiness that she could have no cause to repine.
Obstinate, headstrong girl, tell me once for all, are you engaged to my nephew?
I am not.
And will you promise me never to enter into such an engagement?
I'll make no promise of the kind.
Miss Bennet, I am shocked and astonished. I shall not go away until you have given me the assurance I require.
And I certainly never shall give it. I must beg, therefore, to be importuned no further on the subject.
Not so hasty, if you please. I had hoped to spare you this last humiliation, but your insolence forbids it. I am no stranger to the particulars of your sister's infamous elopement. I know all. The young man's marrying her was a patched-up business at the expense of my nephew. Oh, you needn't start, miss. Nobody knows about the whole affair better than you. But I don't wonder that you blush to find yourself discovered. You used your arts well. My nephew must have spent full £5,000 or £6,000 to save your family from disgrace. I should think that such generosity might appeal a little to your gratitude and your sense of decency.
Madam,
It is quite useless to protest. I have my facts from the best authority. Heaven knows Darcy has reason enough to keep away from Wickham's flirtations and entanglements, but that is a family affair. However, you have managed to get him mixed up in them again to the extent of £5,000. But that is not enough. You want to make this shameless girl my nephew's sister, and the son of his father Stuart his brother. Heaven and earth, are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted?
Madam, you have insulted me in every possible manner. I must beg to return to the house. This is beyond endurance.
Selfish girl. You are then resolved to have him?
Lady Catherine, I have nothing further to say.
Very well. I shall know now how to act. Do not imagine your ambition will be gratified. Depend upon it, I shall carry my point. I take no leave of you, Miss Bennet. You deserve no such attention. You will see what it is to arouse my displeasure.
Can it be possible? Do we owe all this to Mr. Darcy? Oh, it is intolerable.
Lizzie, dear? What is the matter? Is there any new trouble?
Yes, there's no end of trouble. Lady Catherine has just been here.
Lady Catherine?
Yes, yes, and she says... Oh, Jane.
Tell me, Lizzie.
She says it was Darcy who paid all the money to Wickham. It was Darcy saved us. And she says I persuaded him, I ensnared him, and she's insulted me.
My dear Lizzie, there must be some mistake. It was my good uncle.
No, Jane. It must be true. I can put things together now. My aunt's hints and the letter, you know I did not want to show it to you. And what Lydia let fall, her fear of Wickham's anger.
But dear, even so, Mr. Darcy's motives are clear enough, and that should cause you no pain.
You are mistaken. I know his motive. He feels that he's responsible because he was silent about Wickham's true character. He told me all this would never have happened had he done his duty, and now he will despise us. He will never wish to see us again as long as he lives.
The young gentleman from Netherfield, madam. I told them they would find you here.
Jane, I cannot see them.
Miss Bennet! I am so happy to see you again. Miss Elizabeth, it is good indeed to be back once more at Longbourn. Miss Bennet is going to show me the Hermitage. We shall be back directly.
Miss Bennet, believe me, I should not have followed my friend. I only expected to ride with him to the lodge, but I met my aunt coming away from here. And from something she said, I imagined she might have offended, distressed you. Forgive my intrusion. I will go.
No, stay. Mr. Darcy, excuse my own incivility. Your aunt's visit has excited me, but I shall be myself in a moment. Mr. Darcy, your aunt has told me of our overwhelming obligation to you. You must let me thank you for your unexampled kindness to my poor sister.
Damn, I beg your pardon, Miss Bennet. Oh, I beg your pardon. What right has my aunt to meddle in my affairs? How dare she give you such distress?
You know, it's far better we know the truth, Mr. Darcy. For my part, I can never express to you our obligation.
Miss Bennet, the obligation was entirely my own. I only did what was my decent, plain duty. You remember, I told you, if I had spoken, this would have never happened.
Yes, I remember, but you exaggerated your own responsibility. Of course, my father will see you about your loan to us. I would not have Lady Catherine think...
Oh, I will settle matters with Lady Catherine. Have no fears on that score, Miss Bennet. She shall be set right, I assure you.
Thank you. And for all your trouble, your kindness. My family can never repay you.
Your family owes me nothing. If I had any thought beyond my duty, it was thought of you. Perhaps I ought not to say all this, but I owe you a great deal, Miss Bennet, more than you can know, and I want you to understand me better. I really am not the pretentious prig I must have seemed to you. I wish you could forgive me for my abominable pride.
Will, on one condition.
Name it.
That you forget my unwarrantable prejudice.
I really think, after all, I should be grateful to my aunt. She has done us an enormous service.
Well, Lady Catherine loves to be useful. And Jane and Mr. Bingley. Is that by your permission?
Yes, I told you that I'd been kinder to my friend than to myself. It is my own fault. My selfish conceit has wounded your past help. Every sentiment of your nature has felt it, seen it.
But one sentiment, they say, is blind.
Miss Bennet, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth,